Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. Today we're going to talk about how to choose a therapist or how to choose a coach. So in the first part of the video, I'm going to talk about different psychotherapeutic traditions, especially the most popular ones, the ones we might hear about more often or find more easily, so that you can better situate your mind and have an idea of what to look for, what would be most compatible with what you are looking for, what you feel you need. And in the second part of the video, I'm going to talk about the absolute most important factor when choosing a therapist or a coach or actually any professional that you want or need to help you in some area of your life. First of all, I'm going to talk about CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. That is probably the most popular one at the moment, the one we hear about the most, the one that is most widely used. So CBT, as the name says, cognitive behavioral therapy, it focuses on your cognition and on your behavior. It is a very surface level approach, so it's only going to target your symptoms and your thinking patterns and your behavioral patterns. It is an approach that is very short term and it doesn't require much depth, which is why health insurances really like it, because it's very short, it's affordable. Basically, people come in, they patch you up, and they send you back out. This approach does have its merits. Several studies show that CBT has been especially effective for people in place of taking medication, for example, which is always a really good thing. And especially for very targeted things like phobias or certain types of addictions, it can be very useful. But obviously, as I've been saying, it's a very superficial approach, so it's not going to target the root of your problems or the cause of your problems. So as much as it can help in a short term to remove the symptoms, it's not really going to prevent the symptoms to reoccur in the future because you're not tackling the root of the problem. So as I said, this can be a very helpful approach in some situations. My biggest problem with it is the fact that it is advertised as a cure for all approach, which it is definitely not, because no approach is a cure for all approach. Then we have the humanistic approach, that is client-centered therapy. They stem from the works of Carl Rogers. And this is a really beautiful approach that I really like. And as the name says, it centers on the client. So it's about the client or the patient doing the talking, and the therapist is there basically to hold the space and to observe the work unfold. So by talking and by letting things out, the client is working through things themselves and the therapist is influencing as little as possible. Then we have the very traditional psychoanalytic approaches. The most famous of them is the Freudian approach, so the Freudian psychoanalysis. Now this is a very interesting approach because it is very, very grounding. As cliche as it sounds, most of our problems do come from our childhood and our relationship to our parents growing up, and this approach will really focus on those early years a lot. And it looks at the unconscious as this depth inside of us where everything that was once conscious but isn't anymore goes. So anything that we repress or forget, but that obviously still impacts our behaviors. So it is a very interesting approach to get started with explorations of the unconscious. Freud was actually the first one to take the unconscious seriously in the medical realm. Before that, it was only really talked about in philosophy. And so we owe all of that to him. Now, the psychoanalytic approach can be very, very intense and is usually very long term as well. So it can take several years or it can go on for several years, and people can have sessions up to 5 times a week. which is a lot and very, very intensive. And the work itself is based a lot on working with dreams and free association, which is when the analyst will say something and the patient will respond with whatever comes to their mind first. So it's about what the unconscious says through you, things that you say before you have a chance of consciously thinking about them or consciously censoring them. Next, we're going to talk about the psychodynamic approach. Now, this focuses on exploring the unconscious feelings and thoughts and how the past impacts the present. So it is very, very close to the psychoanalytic approach, as we can see, and it is one of the oldest types of psychotherapy. This therapy's theory is actually informed by the psychoanalytic theory, so they're very closely linked. The difference with this one is that psychodynamic therapies can be very brief. Not necessarily, but you have the choice of having a very brief therapy, which is where you focus on one aspect that you wanna treat or that you wanna explore, rather than the more traditional psychoanalytic approach, which allows the client to associate freely and discuss unconnected issues. And as I said, this can take a very, very, very long time. So the last approach I want to talk about is the Jungian approach, that is analytical psychology. And that is where my background comes from, so obviously I'm going to be a little bit biased in this. The Jungian approach is very, very interesting. It has the same basis as the psychoanalytic approach, and in fact, Jung and Freud were colleagues and worked very, very closely together in the beginning of Jung's career, and they actually were the ones who together brought psychoanalysis to the United States. So this is possibly the most profound approach that you will find in psychotherapy. It is very, very deep, it is very turbulent, it is very challenging, it is hard, it is painful, and it is also extremely rewarding, and it is beautiful, beautiful work. It is part of the world of depth psychology, and it is really a psychology of the soul. So there is a highly spiritual element in the work as well, even though in actual sessions you won't really approach the topic of spirituality unless you want to. But it's kind of there in the background the whole time, and you're really following and developing your soul's journey, and the point of it is to become as balanced and as whole an individual as possible. So this is an overview of some of the main approaches that you'll find out there. Now, what is really important to remember with all of these approaches is that none of them are a cure for all approach. None of them will be the right approach for all kinds of people and all kinds of situations and all kinds of needs. Different people will need different approaches, and even will need different approaches in different times of their lives. So it's really about checking in with yourself, checking in with your intuition, feeling out if you're looking for a therapist, feeling out which of these resonates with you more, which of these are you drawn to, and go with that gut feeling. Ultimately, it's your gut that's going to give you the answer to what you're looking for. But now I want to talk about the most important thing that you need to know when choosing a therapist. And this also applies to choosing a coach. And as I mentioned, actually to choosing any professional that you want to hire to help you in your life. And what that is, it's the power of love. Now, I'm obviously not talking about romantic love here. I'm talking about the love that enables true and deep connections. Looking at the scientific and research world of psychotherapy, there were several studies conducted along the years that try to identify what exactly makes a therapy effective. Scientists asked themselves whether it was the theories used, the methods applied, the school of thought that the therapist comes from, or the therapist's ideology, and all these questions of these several schools of thoughts that I went through and all of that. Now, what they found is that none of these aspects were statistically significant. The only factor across the board, across all these studies, that determines whether a therapy is successful or not is the therapeutic relationship. It is when there is a true, authentic bond between therapist and client that the work progresses. So this is what I mean with the power of love. When you have a bond with someone that allows you to truly trust them, where you feel like they really, really care about you, where you feel like you're in a really, really safe space, where you're truly heard, truly seen, and truly understood, that is when the work progresses. Now, this is something that I want you to apply whenever you look for anyone in your life to help you in any area of your life. So it can be when you're choosing a therapist, it can be when you're choosing a coach, it can even be when you're choosing a personal trainer, a massage therapist, or a medical doctor. It's all about whether you truly connect with the person. That's when love is involved in the work. And we can truly never underestimate the power of love because love heals.